It was sold to Kenyans as a landmark of a national ambition, a cleansing 60,000-seater stadium rising from the grounds of Nairobi Jamhuri Park, a venue worth over 2027 African Cup of Nations and a symbol of the country's sporting renaissance. But behind the grand vision of Talanta Sports City lies a tale of inflated contracts, floated procurement laws, and public money that has quietly vanished into the gaps between what was approved and what was actually signed. Auditor General Nancy Kadongo has laid bare the scale of the problem. In her last report, she revealed that the National Treasury had approved 35 billion for funding the stadium to be drawn from the Sports and Arts Social Development Fund with a 6 years repayment plan, but the contract was signed for 48.85 billion shillings, resulting in unsupported price variation of 10.85 billion shillings. That 10.85 billion gap enough to build several regional hospitals or hundreds of kilometers of rural roads has no paper trail to explain. The manner in which the contract was signed makes the picture worse. According to Kadundu's report, the contract was awarded through a direct procurement method that did not meet the competitive criteria demanded by Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act of 2015, explaining terms the government bypassed the open tender process entirely, handing out a multi-billion shilling contract without subjecting it to the market competition and without apparently asking whether Kenyans were getting value for their money. There is no analysis that was done to determine whether Kenya was getting any value for money from the Talanta Stadium project. Attendee's report blandly states the contract itself, she adds, was formulated in terms putative to Kenyans. The road it runs deeper than the main stadium contracts. Kadungu has questioned the spending of 1.2 billion on the ground where Talanta Sports Stadium is being constructed and raised concerns over 300 million shillings cannot be accounted for in the Sports, Art and Social Development Fund for the year ended June 2024. The physical inspection of the site told its own grim story. The audit revealed that the project led to the demolition of 2 football pitches and 2 restaurant and access roads that had previously been constructed. Streetlights on the property were not functioning and certain chain link fence built around it had been vandalized. These were facilities that Kenyans had already paid for, built, then bulldozers with no accounting of the loss. The finding directly contradict assurance made at the stadium launch. Our findings contradict assurance made by the former sports cabinet secretary Ababu Namwamba that most of the existing facilities at Jamhuri Posta Ground would remain intact, with the contractor agreeing to relocate some structures with a value or from the menu, a promise made with fanfare at the groundbreaking ceremony presided over by President William Ruto in March 2023. The mismanagement extends to how sports money has been distributed more broadly. Of the 14.2 billion transferred from Sports, Art and Social Development Fund, shillings 11.5 billion was allocated to Sport Federation for developing local sports. However, despite federations submitting their budget on time, funds disbursement were often delayed, sometimes by up to 2 months after event had already taken place. Kadungu warned this delay may have hindered the planning and the implementation of essential operation elements, thereby adversely affecting the federation's reputation and the country's ability to host major sporting events. For a nation co-hosting AFCON 2027 alongside Uganda and Tanzania, the timing of this revelation is particularly damaging. The 60,000 capacity seater stadium at Jamhuri along Ngong Road in Kenya's flagship venue for the tournament. Construction is ongoing with the Kenya Defense Forces overseeing the work. The clock is ticking. What makes the Talanta scandal emblematic of a wider pattern is that it is not isolated. Kavungu's recent report flagged similar irregularities at stadiums across the country, from Bohongo Stadium in Kakamega to Jomo Kenyatta Grounds in Kisumu to Joe Kadenge Stadium in Nairobi, where contractors have abandoned sites after collecting payment. Substandard work have been signed off without technical verification, and billions in public funds have disappeared into the void of value for money could not be confirmed. The phrase Kavundu's careful lawyers formulated appears over and over in our reports like a refrain. It has become the polite way of saying what ordinary Kenyans already suspect, that their money was taken and nobody is being held to account for it. The Talanta Sports City was meant to be different. It was meant to be Kenya's moment, with AFCON 2027 approaching and shillings 10.85 billion still unaccounted for. The question is now whether anyone in government will treat this audit as a warning or simply add it to the long shelf of reports that gathered dust while the money was gone.